Okay, g'day everyone. Welcome to another edition of How to Become a Math Magician. Today's lesson we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting fractions. Now if you're new to this channel, make sure you scroll down and hit the subscribe button. What we try and do here at How to Become a Math Magician is to give you tips and pointers on how to actually show all forms of working out for all your different problems and questions, which will hopefully help you get extra marks in any exam or assignment type questions. Okay, so adding and subtracting fractions. All right, so we've got a bit of a description up here. So a fraction has two parts to it. So we'll go back to basics to start with. So a fraction has two parts to it. A numerator, which is the number on the top of the fraction symbol, and a denominator, which is the number on the bottom of the fraction symbol. And here we have it described here. So the numerator, okay, is this one here. Okay, it's on top of the fraction symbol here. All right, and the denominator, all right, is we have 4 in this occasion here. It's the number on the bottom. So this is a typical looking fraction of 1/4. Okay, so now the very important point to note, whenever you're trying to add or subtract fractions, the most important part is to have a common denominator. So this number here needs to be the same for the two parts of the equation or the expression that you're trying to solve. Okay, so the only way we can add or subtract fractions is to have the denominators the same, and this is commonly called having a common denominator. So we'll go ahead and just talk about that a bit further. So an example here, pretty easy one to start with. All right, so we have 1/4, okay, plus another 1/4. All right, and we can add these together straight up without having to do anything, because as you can see, this denominator is 4. Okay, this denominator is 4. Okay, so they're common. They're the same denominators. So all we need to do is, in this occasion, it's adding. Okay, so we just add the numerators together. So it's simply 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, and the common denominator just stays the same across here. Okay, and graphically you can see it here. If you had 1/4 of a pie or a pizza or something as a real life example, and you had another quarter, okay, you can see that you end up with 2 quarters. Okay, so just a pretty simple example there to start with. All right, so but now they're not always that simple, especially in assignments and exam type questions. So let's have a look at this next example here. So okay, this example we have 1/4 again this time, plus 1/3 this time. Okay, so if we graphically have a look at that, you can see that quite obviously it's not very simple to you can't just add a quarter of something to a third and just get a straightforward answer. Okay, so when we have two different denominators, which we do in this case, this denominator is 4 and this denominator is 3. So they're not common, they're not the same. We just can't add them together. First, what we must do is make the denominators the same, and then we can add the numerators. Okay, so there's two ways you can do this, and we'll explain both ways. So the first way is to multiply the two denominators together to end up with a common denominator. All right, or what you can do is find out if there is a number that can be multiplied to the smaller denominator to give you the exact larger denominator. They'll also give you a common denominator. Now don't worry if that doesn't make too much sense just at the moment. We'll go ahead and explain that. So the first method we'll use is this method 1, by multiplying the two denominators together to give us a common denominator. And we'll use this example here, 1/4 plus 1/3. Okay, so then if we have a look here, this is what we mean. Okay, so 1/4 plus 1/3, All right, so we're multiplying the denominators together as we show here. So we do 4 multiplied by 3, okay? And then that will end up giving us some form of twelfths plus another portion of twelfths. And then we can add them together because 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, so the next step of how to do that, all right, is shown here below. So we start off with the first part of our expression, a quarter. All right, so we just basically say what did we do to this denominator of 4 to turn it into 12 here, or twelfths? Okay, so what we did, we multiplied by 3, just as we showed up here. Okay, we did 4 multiplied by 3. Okay, so when we write it in this format, 4 multiplied by 3 gives us 12. And the number one rule with fractions, whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top, or vice versa. Whatever you do to the top, you must also do to the bottom, and that will keep the fraction equivalent to itself. Okay, so if we go ahead and do this, we go 4 times 3 is 12. Then we do the same to the numerator. 1 times 3, all right, gives us 3. All right, so over here, so when we convert 1/4 to twelfths, we end up with 3 twelfths. Okay, and hopefully you guys can see that pretty clearly here. And then we'll go ahead and we look at the second part of our operation here, which is our, if we go back up here, it's the 1/3. Okay, so we're now converting 1/3 into twelfths. So how do we do that? So once again, as we saw up here, we did 4 times 3, or 3 times 4 to give us twelfths. So when we look at specifically the 1/3 portion, the denominator here, 3, we multiplied by 4, and that gave us 12. Okay, so we have to do the same to the numerator here. So we have 1, which is our numerator, multiplied by 4. Okay, and then that will give us 4. 1 times 4 is 4. So the converted fraction of 1/3 into twelfths becomes 4 twelfths. Okay, and hopefully you can see that and follow that, how we've done it here. So now when we have a common denominator, then we're good to go. Okay, so our common denominator we have here is 12, and here is also 12. Okay, so we basically now just, because our denominators are the same or common, now we can just go ahead and add the numerators together. So then it just simply becomes 3 plus 4, okay, which gives us 7. Okay, so our answer, and this is all the working out that you would show to get maximum marks for this type of question. So our original expression of 1/4 plus 1/3, okay, that's converted to 3 twelfths plus 4 twelfths, which gives us 7 twelfths. Okay, and just to make it a bit clearer as well, we've just given a graphical expression of that as well. Okay, so as we started out before, we had this picture of 1/4, okay, plus 1/3, and that wasn't, you can't just add them two together. Now, as we've just shown the working out, this is a graphical representation. Okay, so 1/4 we converted into 3 twelfths. Okay, if you remember just before, and that's shown here, 1, 2, 3 twelfths. Okay, and then our 1/3, as we mathematically calculated just above, okay, we got 4 twelfths. Okay, and that's graphically shown here. So the 1/3 gets split up into 4 twelfths, and then of course you can just add them together like we did. You have 3 twelfths and 4 twelfths gives you 7 twelfths. Okay, or 7/12. All right, so far so good. So now we'll go on to a different, so this is method number 2, as we saw before. Okay, so this time our equation, or our expression, is 7/8, or 7/8. This one's we'll do a subtraction this time, minus 3/4. Okay, so what does that become? So once again, we don't have our first of all, we look at the denominators and we ask, are they the same? We have 8 and 4. Well, the short answer is no, the denominators are not the same. So we can't just go ahead and subtract the numerators yet. Okay, we first have to find a common denominator. So in this example, our denominators are 8 and 4, which obviously are not common, they're not the same. Okay, so now the second method is we ask, is there a number that we can multiply the smaller denominator to give us the exact larger denominator? Okay, so what that means, our smaller denominator is 4. Is there a number we can multiply 4 by to actually turn that into 8 or make it equal 8? Okay, so 4 times something, a whole number, 4 times something gives us 8. Now we can just rearrange this to be 8 divided by 4, and that'll give us our answer, which ends up being 2. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, so in this example, the answer is yes, we do have a factor or a number that we can multiply 4 by that will actually turn it into 8, which will give us a common denominator. All right, so yeah, in order for us to continue and complete the operation, we must make the denominators the same. To keep, and something also important to remember is to keep each fraction equal or equivalent. What we do to the bottom, the denominator, we must also do to the top, which is the numerator. So we'll go ahead and show all this working out. All right, so we'll first of all just show the graphical example. Okay, 7/8 minus 3/4. That's what it would look like, graphically represented in a circular format. Okay, we have 7/8 and 3/4. So then to convert that, all right, we go ahead and do this. All right, so first of all, so once again, our expression here is 7/8 minus 3/4. Okay, so what we're trying to achieve here, once again, is the denominators being common. Okay, so, and we're trying to get the denominators, we know we can turn both into 8. Okay, now this one, 7/8, we don't have to do anything to it because its denominator already is 8. Okay, so we just write that out again here. So it's 7/8, that doesn't change. Okay, but this one here, 3/4, is the one we're interested in. We're converting this fraction, 3/4, into so many eighths over here. So like we've just discussed, okay, so we do 4 multiplied by 2, all right, gives us 8. Okay, so we've turned this denominator from 4 by multiplying it by 2 into 8, all right, and then the golden rule is what you do to the bottom of a fraction, you must do the same to the top. So therefore, we have 3 multiplied by 2. Okay, that converts into 6. All right. So now we have a situation where we have common denominators. They're both 8. So now we can go ahead and just complete the operation. And we simply just subtract the numerators now. So we have 7/8 minus 6/8. We just go 7 minus 6 is 1. Okay, and our common denominator stays the same. We have 1/8. Okay, hopefully that makes sense for you guys. And if we just have a visual, just to reinforce that visually, okay, this is what it would look like. So our 7/8 we have here as possibly parts of a pizza. And then our 3/4 converted into 6/8 as we shown before. Okay, 6/8. And when you do that, 7/8 minus 6/8 leaves you 1/8. Okay, as we've worked out, and that's the visual representation as well of it. Okay, now one more example. Okay, so the second way, so we use this same example, all right, 7/8 minus 3/4, and we'll do it the original way, the first way, as we did earlier. If I just scroll this in a bit. Okay, and what I mean by that is we multiply the denominators together to get our common denominator. Okay, so we've just shown that you can find a common factor of 2. We multiplied this fraction by 2, top and bottom. We get a common denominator of 8. Now this time, if we didn't do that, we do it the other way, and we multiply the denominators together. So if we go ahead and do that, 8 multiplied by 4, okay, gives 32. Okay, so once again, so we would have our denominator of 32, okay, for both parts of the fraction here. Okay, so we go ahead and show our working out here. So if we convert, so we start with 7/8, okay, and what did we do to 8 to turn it into 32? Okay, like we saw up here, we got 8 and we multiplied it by 4, which gave us 32. Okay, so 8 times 4 is 32. So golden rule, what we do to the bottom of a fraction, we must do to the top. So then we convert the numerator. So we go 7 times 4, okay, is 28. All right, so 7/8, an equivalent fraction of that is 28 over 32. Okay, so they're still equivalent, they're still equal. It's just expressed as 4 times larger, the numerator and the denominator. Okay, and then we go ahead and convert our 3/4, okay, into so many lots of 32. Okay, so once again, if we look up here, we had 8 times 4, or 4 times 8, all right, to give us our new denominator of 32. Okay, so down here, we did 4 multiplied by 8, gave us 32. So then once again, we do the same to the numerator, 3 multiplied by 8, okay, and 3 multiplied by 8 gives us 24. Okay, so 3/4, an equivalent fraction of that, if you multiply the top and bottom by 8, you'll get 24 over 32. Okay, so there we go. So we've converted each part of the operation there into now 30 seconds, or a fraction of 32. And then we just simply now, we just rewrite it here as we've done here. So we've got 28 over 32 minus 24 over 32. Okay, and because the denominators are the same, we can just simply go ahead and subtract the numerators. So then we end up with 28 minus 24, which gives us 4. And the common denominator here is 32. Now, in an exam question, this would be a correct answer. 4 over 32 is correct. However, it's not expressed in its simplest form. Okay, so I've just put a note here to maximize your marks in an exam or an assignment. You always will be expected to express your answer in its simplest form. Okay, now we've made a really comprehensive video here on the channel for simplifying fractions. So if you want some more information about that, be sure to click on that one. That'll give you a detailed explanation on simplifying fractions. But just quickly, we'll go through here. So what we've done is we've turned 4 over 32. We've divided, there's a common factor of 4, okay? So 4 divides into 4, and 4 also divides into 32. So if we simplify that, once again, what we do to the top of a fraction, we must do to the bottom. So we turn our numerator, we go 4 divided by 4. Okay, that simplifies down to give us 1. And 32, our denominator, we also must divide by 4. And when we do that, it gives us 8. All right, so there we go. So we still end up with our same answer of 1/8, okay, as we saw up here. Okay, 1/8. All right, just a different way of working it out. All right, so this method, you just multiply the denominators together to give you your common denominator. But just beware that doing it this way will give you the correct answer, but you may need to do an extra step at the end to simplify your final fraction if it's not already in its simplest form. Okay, great. So I might just leave the lesson there. Hopefully that was a bit of an information overload. Hopefully that made sense for you guys and helped you out with how to add and subtract fractions. Okay, so the most important part, of course, is having the common denominator. Once the denominators are the same, then you can just simply add the numerators together if it's an addition that it's asking you, or if it's a subtraction, obviously you just subtract the numerators. But the most important thing is to have a common denominator if you don't already have one to start with. All right, awesome. Okay, so thanks for tuning in for this one. Feel free to drop a comment in the comments section below if this helped you out, or if this, or if you have any more questions regarding this, or if you have a couple of question examples that you may need help with. Pop them in the comments section below, and we'll get around and have a look at that, and we might be able to do a video to help you out with your own particular problem. Okay, great. So thanks guys once again. Make sure you subscribe, and catch you on the next one. Cheers.